Mom and sister stole my $50,000 savings and moved to Hawaii, then called panicking when they learned the accounts weren't what they thought. The email's subject line said, "Don't bother coming home early." I was standing in a hotel hallway in Seattle, still in my blazer, coffee in one hand, phone in the other, 2 minutes before a client presentation. I opened it because I thought it was about the mail or the garden or one of the 100 small passive-aggressive complaints my mother had been sending me since I made the mistake of letting her move into my house. Instead, 3 paragraphs, 3 short, cheerful, absolutely devastating paragraphs. My mother, Patricia Carter, informed me that she and my sister Nicole had made a fresh start, that they had taken my $500,000 in savings, cleared out the house, loaded my furniture, my jewelry, my electronics, and my grandmother's heirlooms into a moving truck and relocated to Hawaii. The last line read, "Your sister and I are headed to Hawaii. Enjoy being alone without money." I read it twice, then a third time, then I smiled. Not the kind of smile you'd expect from someone who just had her life stolen, the kind of smile you get when months of quiet, careful preparation finally meet the exact disaster you prepared for. They had no idea. My name is Olivia Carter. I'm 34 years old. I'm a financial operations consultant, which means companies pay me good money to find where resources are leaking before the leak becomes a flood. I am by professional training someone who does not leave important things unprotected. I read contracts before I sign them. I back up files before I open emails from unknown senders. I keep records the way other people keep regrets, thoroughly and organized by date. I had been doing that professionally for 9 years when Patricia and Nicole decided to rob me. Let me back up. My father, Gerald Carter, died 18 months before this story begins. Heart attack fast and without warning. The way the worst things always are. He left behind a small life insurance policy, a 2017 Ford F-150, and a family dynamic that had been quietly lopsided for as long as I could remember. Nicole was the favorite. This is not a wound talking. It's just a fact, the same way weather is a fact. Nicole is 4 years older than me, and from the time we were children, my mother operated on a system I did not understand until adulthood. Nicole's needs were emergencies, and mine were inconveniences. Nicole crashed her first car at 19. My mother paid to replace it. Nicole dropped out of 2 colleges, accumulated $28,000 in credit card debt, and had 3 jobs in 4 years. My mother called her a free spirit. I paid my own way through university on a scholarship. I worked 12-hour weekends to maintain, graduated with honors, and my mother told me I was lucky. After my father died, Patricia said she could not manage the house alone. She was 61, healthy, and fully capable of independent life. But grief makes people say things, and I was not immune to it, either. So, I invited her to stay with me. Then, Nicole just needed a year to get back on her feet. That year became 3. I paid the mortgage on the 4-bedroom house I had bought in Portland, Oregon at age 29. I paid the utilities, the groceries, the property taxes, the homeowner's insurance. I covered the Wi-Fi, the streaming subscriptions, the landscaping service Patricia insisted on. I drove my mother to her doctor appointments. I handled the estate paperwork when my father died. All of it while working full-time on a career that required me to travel 3 or 4 days a month. In return, I was treated like management they resented. The small signs came first, the way they always do. Nicole started asking questions about my banking apps about 8 months ago. Casual questions slipped into normal conversation. Do you use that savings app or a regular bank? Is your main account the one you use for groceries? I told myself she was thinking about her own finances. I told myself it was nothing. Then I noticed mail being opened and resealed. Not obviously, just slightly off at the corner, the fold a half-inch different from how I leave it, one piece then another. I told myself it was the humidity. Then Patricia started hovering whenever I paid household bills, standing in the kitchen doorway while I sat at the counter with my laptop, not saying anything, just present, eyes moving to the screen. I told myself she was bored. The stomach drop moment came on a Tuesday in March, about 6 months before Seattle. I came home from a client trip to find Nicole at my desk in the home office facing away from the door, doing something on a piece of paper with my bank statement, a printed one I had left in the recycling bin, and a calculator. She closed the paper quickly when she heard me. Said she was just using the desk. Her expression was the look of someone interrupted, not someone embarrassed. I didn't say anything. I went to my bedroom, closed the door, and sat on the edge of the bed with my hands very still in my lap. I didn't feel panic. I felt the specific cold clarity that comes when you realize the threat you've been filing under. Probably nothing is not nothing at all. It's something. It's been something for a while. That night, I called Daniel Mercer. Daniel Mercer has been my personal attorney for 6 years. He's 47, former corporate litigator, now runs a private practice in Portland, specializing in asset protection and civil disputes. He has the kind of voice that makes chaotic situations feel containable. Low, deliberate, never surprised. When I told him what I'd seen, he was quiet for a moment and said, "How much do they know about your full financial picture?" I said, "Probably too much," he said. "Then we fix that now before anything happens. Not after." That was the beginning of 6 months of very quiet, very careful work. The first call Daniel made was to Lena Brooks, a forensic accountant with 15 years of experience in asset tracing and fraud documentation. Lena is the kind of person who gets excited about spreadsheets the way other people get excited about sports. She reviewed my accounts, my household records, and the pattern of small transfers. I had noticed amounts under $200, irregular intervals from an account Patricia had limited access to for household expenses, and within a week produced a 14-page report documenting unauthorized activity going back 11 months. 11 months. Nicole had been at this for nearly a year. Daniel and Lena walked me through the restructuring. The $500,000 in savings was moved out of the account Patricia believed was my main savings repository and into a protected investment ladder split across 3 instruments tied to my consulting LLC. What remained in the visible account was a temporary holding balance connected to incoming vendor payments and a traceable disbursement from a separate estate matter, legitimate funds, but structured so that touching them without authorization created a documented paper trail across state lines under federal wire fraud statutes. I photographed every item of value in the house: serial numbers, purchase receipts, insurance valuations. The vintage record player I had restored with my father, documented. My grandmother's silver candlesticks, photographed and insured individually. Several high-value pieces I suspected Nicole had already been appraising were quietly replaced with insured replicas after Lena confirmed the appraisal research in the browsing history of the household iPad, which Nicole used and believed was not monitored. It was monitored. I also updated the home security system to cloud backup on a private server they had no access to and no knowledge of. The system had audio and video coverage of the main entry, the living room, the kitchen, and the front exterior, finally. I updated the ownership records on 2 shared storage units and removed Patricia from the account I had allowed her to access for household expenses, replacing it with a limited use card with a $600 ceiling that triggered real-time alerts to my phone. And then I waited. I did not know when. I did not know what exactly would happen, but I had done this work professionally for 9 years. I knew what a pre-theft pattern looked like. I just never expected to see it inside my own house. The consulting trip to Seattle was booked in early October, 4 days. A mid-sized logistics company restructuring their operations budget. I told Patricia and Nicole 2 weeks in advance. I watched their reactions carefully. Nicole nodded quickly and left the room. Patricia asked what day I was leaving. Both of those responses were slightly off. I didn't say anything. I left on a Monday morning. By Tuesday afternoon, while I was in the 3rd hour of a budget review meeting on the 14th floor of a Seattle office tower, the email arrived, "Your sister and I are headed to Hawaii. Enjoy being alone without money." I stood in that hallway and breathed for exactly 45 seconds. My chest was tight and my hands were cold, and something at the base of my throat wanted to become a sound I was not going to make in a hotel corridor. Then I forwarded the email to Daniel. Then I called my bank's fraud team. I had a dedicated contact, Rebecca Hull, a senior fraud specialist, because Daniel had arranged the relationship 6 months earlier, specifically for this possibility. Then I opened my laptop and checked the security archive. The moving truck had arrived at 9:14 a.m. that morning. Patricia had entered her door code at 9:11 a.m. The footage showed 2 movers and Nicole directing them through the house, room by room. I could hear Nicole's voice clearly through the audio. At one point, she said, "Take everything worth money first." I sat with my laptop on a chair in the hotel hallway and watched my house being emptied in 14 minutes of security footage. The couch, the dining table, the framed family photographs, the silver candlesticks, the record player, the coffee machine, even the throw blankets folded on the living room chair, room by room, efficient, cheerful. I closed the laptop, stood up, and walked into the meeting. I delivered the full presentation. I am a professional. I was not going to let them take that. 2. By 6:00 p.m. That evening, Daniel had filed emergency notices with Portland PD, the bank's fraud division, and a federal reporting channel, because the movement of stolen property across state lines and the interstate electronic transfer of misappropriated funds triggered federal jurisdiction under 18 U.S.C. Par of 2314. He also contacted the Hawaii property manager, whose name appeared in a forwarded confirmation email Patricia had mistakenly sent to a shared family account I still had read access to. That was the detail that opened everything. Patricia had rented a luxury condo in Honolulu. 6 weeks, $4,800 per week, using a debit card linked to the flagged account, the property manager. Once Daniel's office contacted him with documentation, pulled the booking records and cooperated immediately. He had no interest in being caught between a fraud case and an unhappy guest. Rebecca Holt at the bank confirmed within 2 hours that the account Patricia had accessed was now frozen, pending investigation. The transfer Patricia believed she'd completed had processed into a review queue, standard protocol for large movements from accounts with newly flagged activity. The funds were inaccessible, not gone, just locked with a paper trail attached to every digit. I booked the first flight home the next morning. The house was stripped. I unlocked the front door at 11:22 p.m. and stood in the entry and let the emptiness hit me. No rug, no console table, no framed photo of my father and me at my college graduation that had hung on the wall for 5 years. The hooks where my coats hung were bare. The hallway smelled like moving tape and absence. I did not stand there long. I put on latex gloves. Daniel had specifically said to treat the house as a potential evidence scene, and I photographed every room, every empty bracket, every drawer they had pulled out and left crooked, every shelf they had cleaned. Then I went to the kitchen. Patricia had left a printed note on the floor beside the open safe. She had taken the visible cash envelope inside. $800 in emergency cash I had left there deliberately, along with decoy documents formatted to look like account information. She had taken all of it, which told me she had felt thorough and victorious. She had not looked under the bottom shelf of the safe. Taped there was a small index card in my handwriting. 5 words, check the account names again. I took a photograph of it still in place. Then I peeled it off carefully and put it in my bag. Then I poured myself a glass of water, because it was the one thing they hadn't taken that I needed right then. And I waited for the phone to ring. Nicole called first, 7:43 a.m. the next morning. I let it go. Patricia called at 7:51, then 7:53, then 8:02. On the fourth call at 8:09 a.m., I answered. She didn't say hello. Patricia Carter has not said hello to me in approximately 3 years. I say that without bitterness, just as documentation. She launched straight in, her voice pitched high in a register I associated with things not going her way. Olivia, what did you do? We need help right now. The card isn't working. The transfer is frozen. The condo office is outside the door, asking about payment. And Nicole says the bank told her the funds are under review. I leaned against the stripped kitchen counter, outside the window. A neighbor's sprinkler was running. A completely ordinary Tuesday morning. Help with what? I said. With these accounts? What kind of accounts were these? I closed my eyes for 1 second, pictured her face, red, bewildered, still genuinely unable to conceive that I had anticipated this, the kind that belonged to me. I said. Nicole grabbed the phone. I could hear wind and traffic. The condo lobby probably. Stop playing games, she said. Whatever you reported, undo it. We're stuck here and it's your fault. I didn't take anything. I said, you did. You took my property, emptied my house, and your mother sent me a written confession with a subject line. That email was between family, Patricia shouted from somewhere behind her. I wrote that line down on a notepad immediately after the call ended. Daniel laughed for 10 seconds when I read it to him. That email was between family. She had sent a written account of felony theft to my work email address on a Tuesday morning and believed it was a private family communication. I told them I was not going to discuss this further without my attorney present and ended the call. Over the next 72 hours, the case assembled itself the way good preparation always does, not dramatically, but methodically, one confirmed piece after another clicking into place. Monica Reyes, my neighbor across the street, had been watering my plants during the trip. She had seen the moving truck on Tuesday morning and found Patricia's demeanor strange enough to film a short clip on her iPhone. 47 seconds, clear audio in it. Nicole is visible in the doorway directing the movers, and her voice is clearly audible, saying, "Take everything worth money first. Don't waste time on the books." Monica texted me that evening asking if everything was okay. I called her immediately, asked her to preserve the video and not share it, and gave her Daniel's direct number. Detective Carol Yamada was assigned to the case through Portland PD's Property Crimes Unit. 12 years on the force, the last 4 specializing in residential theft and fraud. She was precise and unhurried, the kind of detective who writes everything down and asks you to say things twice, not because she didn't hear you, but because she wants to make sure the record is clean. She reviewed the security footage, Monica's clip, Patricia's email, and Lena's financial documentation in a single 3-hour session at her desk. When she finished, she looked at me and said, "You did our job for us." I told her it wasn't my first audit. She almost smiled. The movers, contacted by Detective Yamada within 48 hours, gave statements confirming they had been hired by Patricia Carter and paid using a debit card linked to the flagged account. They had no knowledge of the legal situation. They cooperated fully. Their invoice became Exhibit C in the formal documentation package. The property manager in Honolulu, coordinating with Daniel and the Hawaii-based attorney Daniel had contacted, a woman named Susan Park. Civil litigation. 8 years practicing in Honolulu, confirmed that the condo payment had failed and that Patricia had attempted to make 2 alternative payments from different cards, both of which were connected to accounts now under the fraud review flag. Patricia and Nicole were in Honolulu with furniture they couldn't sell quickly, money they couldn't access, a condo they couldn't pay for, and an email sitting in my inbox that described, in Patricia's own words, exactly what they had done. The second call came on a Thursday afternoon, 4 days after the first. I was at the stripped kitchen table. I had bought a folding card table from a drugstore because I needed somewhere to work, when my phone rang. Nashville area code. I didn't recognize it. I answered. It was a lawyer's office. Patricia and Nicole had retained local counsel in Honolulu, a man named Gregory Fenn, general practice, who had apparently just finished reviewing the documentation Daniel had forwarded to Susan Park. He put Patricia on the line after 2 minutes of professional preamble. Her voice was different this time. The anger was still there. Patricia is not constitutionally capable of surrendering anger quickly, but underneath it was something I had never heard from her before, something smaller, something that knew. "I want to understand," she said slowly. "What exactly those accounts were and why the money isn't accessible. The accounts are mine," I said. "The money is mine. The property you removed from my house is mine. The documentation of all of that is currently in the hands of a Portland detective, a forensic accountant, a civil attorney in Hawaii, and the Federal Reporting Division for Interstate Property Crimes." Silence. "The email you sent me," I continued. "The one with the subject line, 'Don't bother coming home early,' that has been formally submitted as Exhibit A." More silence. Then very quietly, "I just wanted Nicole to have a real life." And there it was. Not an apology, not an acknowledgement, just the same explanation that had justified every lopsided decision of my entire childhood. Nicole deserved more. Nicole deserved the car replacement and the tuition and the years of free housing, and now apparently my savings and my grandmother's silver. I had been the ATM for the favorite child my whole life, and my mother had just told me from a Honolulu hotel lobby that she still didn't see anything wrong with that. "I know," I said. "That's why I kept records. The civil process was not cinematic. That is worth saying clearly. There was no single moment where I stood in a courtroom and watched them led away in handcuffs, while a judge called them contemptible. Real legal processes are spreadsheets and deadline extensions and phone calls that go to voicemail and documents filed with specific exhibit numbers to specific case file identifiers. What there was, Patricia's attorney, Gregory Fenn, negotiated a civil settlement to avoid a full trial, which would have been damaging and public in a way she could not afford. The settlement included structured repayment of the misappropriated funds, return or replacement value for all removed property, and a formal acknowledgement filed with the court that the removal had been unauthorized. Nicole had less leverage and more direct exposure. She was on camera, on audio, and her fingerprints were on the financial transfer attempts. Her separate restitution agreement was supervised by Susan Park and Detective Yamada and included a probationary structure that would escalate to criminal charges if violated, between the recovery, the insurance claims on items not returned, and the restitution payments. I got back approximately 91% of what had been taken. Real life leaves dents. I knew that going in. Some of the relatives had sided with Patricia early. She had reached them first, with a version of events so softened, it was almost unrecognizable. She had borrowed family funds. Nicole was under stress. I had become cold and controlling after my father's death. For about 2 weeks, I had cousins leaving me careful, distanced messages, and an aunt who stopped answering my calls. Then the documentation surfaced. Then people saw the email. Then the account of what had actually happened, supported by security footage, forensic accounting, and a 47-second iPhone clip of Nicole directing movers to take everything worth money first, replaced Patricia's soft version with the actual one. The relatives who had believed her got quieter. Several apologized. A few disappeared entirely. I didn't chase any of them. I had already spent too much of my life chasing people who needed to be convinced to treat me fairly. Within 3 months, I had rebuilt the house, not just furniture, intent. I bought a dining table that was mine, picked it out alone on a Saturday afternoon from a local shop. No one else's preference in the room, just mine. I rehung art. I repainted 2 rooms. I turned Nicole's old bedroom into a home office for my consulting business, put in a standing desk and a second monitor and a proper chair, and within 60 days was running 2 new client contracts out of that room. The space that had held 3 years of her chaos and my patience was now the space where I was building the next stage of my career. That was my favorite part. I won't pretend otherwise. Patricia called once more about 6 weeks after the settlement was signed. The call was short. She wanted to know if there was any chance of rebuilding the relationship. I thought about that question for a moment. I thought about 11 years of being the one who worked and saved and paid and showed up. I thought about the mail opened and resealed. I thought about Nicole at my desk with a calculator and my bank statement. I thought about the email, "Enjoy being alone without money," and my mother's voice from a Honolulu hotel lobby saying she just wanted Nicole to have a real life, as if my life was a resource she was entitled to reallocate. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Maybe someday, but not right now." She hung up first. "Here is what I want you to take from this. If you take anything at all, I did not set a trap. That framing matters. I prepared, that is different. I noticed, documented, planned, and protected myself from a threat I saw developing. What Patricia and Nicole called a trap was actually just reality. When you take something that doesn't belong to you, the records of the person you took it from become the mechanism of your consequences. That's not cruelty, that's accounting. People who steal from family rely on one thing above everything else, the assumption that love means you won't enforce what's yours, that you'll be too hurt to be strategic, too guilty to file a report, too afraid of being called cold to protect yourself. Patricia had spent 34 years teaching me that lesson. I had finally decided to stop learning it. I do not tell this story to perform strength. I tell it because I was quiet and careful and thorough for 6 months while my family planned to hollow out my life. And the only reason I came out of it with my finances and my house and my future intact is that I treated the situation as what it was. Not a family disagreement, but a documented crime before it happened. Trust is not the same as surrender. Loyalty is not the same as unlimited access. And documentation is not paranoia. It's the difference between a phone call where your mother screams, "Whose accounts were those?" and one where you have nothing left to say at all.